And thank you for joining us for Let's Draw Trees. My name is Rebecca Lowell, and I'm on the team for Wild Wonder Foundation, and they are hosting this class. We have with us Cathy Raingarden, a visual storyteller, urban sketcher, illustrator, and teacher from Berkeley, California. Her degree in landscaping and landscape architecture nurtured her profound love of trees. She leads the East Bay Urban Sketching Group, First Saturday Urban Sketchers. Cathy's artwork can be seen in the pages of Edible East Bay and Chip Sullivan's book, Field Sketching for Environmental Designers. And we have with us Kate Rutter. She is a lifelong sketcher with an experimental and rambunctious visual practice, an avid nature journaler, urban naturalist, educator, and native plant enthusiast. She leads nature journaling workshops and outings and can often be found nature journaling tenacious plants who grow up between cracks in the pavement. So I'm going to hand it over to Kate and Cathy, and thank you so much for joining us. Let's draw some trees.
Woo, thank you. It's so good to see everyone here. And yeah, so Cathy and I have known each other now, almost a decade, maybe a little over. We met through the sketching community. And so that's what brought us here. We'd love to know what brought you here. So if you if we're able to open up the chat, maybe we'd have an opportunity to have people just voice in kind of what brought you here or where you're coming in from. We are in Emeryville, which is between Berkeley and Oakland in the Northern California area, the California floristic province for native plant lovers out there. And I'm super excited. How about you, Cathy?
Absolutely.
Cool. So we're going to draw some trees. We might be drawing trees in surprising, interesting ways. Hopefully you'll just grab your hands and grab your tools and join along with us. Before we get started with that, I wanted to do a little bit more intro, especially with our visual work. So I'm going to do a quick intro, hand it off to Cathy, and then she's got some really tasty, delicious tree action that she's going to guide us through. So we're going to go to this other view. And Rebecca, can you tell us if you can see the stage, what we're talking about here?
Yes, I can
Awesome.
see. And we do have people chiming in the chat from where they're from.
Oh, can you just give us a sense? Because it's a little hard with where we're
So
at to see it all.
we've got some coastal Maine, Hutton, Michigan, and Idaho, Alaska. Let's see, Lake Tahoe.
Wow.
More southern coastal Maine, Colorado, Emeryville. We have people from Oregon, Arizona, Canada, and Ohio. So we've got a great group coming in.
Oh my God, it's so cool to think of like all the trees and where they're at worldwide, right? Like what trees are looking like in Maine right now is probably a little different from what they're looking like in Arizona. So cool. Okay, well, I'm going to hop over here and just show you a little bit about the kind of trees I do. As mentioned by Rebecca, I have what I would call a rambunctious visual practice. So there's a lot of exploratory work here. And sometimes I do fall in love with a good tree or so. So here's my sketchbook. It's usually, let me see if I can come up just a little bit. There we go. And I recognize the stage is a little small, but we're just going to go with it. This is a tree I fell in love with at a river, Cosumnes River. And you can see there's a lot of attention and effort spent on this tree. And right next to it, you'll see a lot more dynamic exploratory learning types of work. And I really love this too. I especially like doing them both kind of together. So, you know, oaks can look like this in our work, or oaks can look like this in our work. There's another one that I thought would be helpful as an introduction, because this is also a lot of what the work that I do looks like. This is actually a trail that I was walking on. And this downed oak, or a willow probably, with all these older, newer water spouts coming out, was downed, and just trying to understand kind of what was happening with the structure of that very old and certainly kind of damaged tree was very interesting, and where it was on the path and who kind of was near it as far as other beings, other life forms, birds, plants, flowers, etc. So over here is this kind of long map, and here's some of the elements that I saw along that pathway. So that is also drawing trees. It's not all about, you know, the lush foliage and the color, although that is fun too. And then another way, so if I really want to kind of get into a tree, really get to know it, I'll spend a lot more time and a lot more attention. I'm a huge fan of branching structures, which you'll see, because that's an activity I've selected for us. And to just really devote some time and attention to how did that tree mature? How did that tree start to build its canopy? And then also wondering maybe what's going on underneath the ground that we can't see. So a lot of wondering. As a nature journaler, I'm really focused on the attention and the curiosity. If the visuals have some appeal, that is, of course, always nice, but not required and not always expected. And sometimes it's about the life of the tree as it's starting. I'm showing this one because Cathy and I have a shared devotion to California buckeyes, which you'll probably see in her work too. And this is just bud burst for California buckeye, and being able to really just fall in love with what's happening and use visuals, use words, use numbers, use pictures, whatever it is, use our touch, sense, and smell, whatever it is, to really kind of commune with that, not just any tree, but that specific tree. So it's a little bit about my intro and work. And then for the tree challenge, I've been experimenting a little bit more. And if you're following along on Arbor April, which was concocted by Cathy, and I'm a happy co-sponsor with that, but really drawing trees in however they show up in our everyday lives. So out the window, really diving in. Here's our buckeye again. Shout out to the buckeye. Diving into the specific leaves and parts, celebrating all of the amazing bark structures and textures that are out there. Like, just, I think we could maybe devote a life to just doing bark, right? And then, you know, really exploring what happens when you start to see a tree through multiple lenses, through kind of the more pictorial and portrait, through more of an abstracted understanding, through some airspace around certain whorls, and then diving into some details. So that's kind of the nature of the work that I do. And I'm going to hand it off now to Cathy for your intro.
Hey, so I think I've always been a tree lover, but it wasn't until I went back to school to study landscape architecture that we really had to do a lot of drawing trees.
Oh, hang on. I'm going to put you on the big screen for a sec. There we go.
Okay, there we go. And so my department head knew about the urban sketching movement, and I just fell head over heels with that whole process of just getting out into the real world and drawing instead of in an art studio. And so I draw trees everywhere I can because I'm a little bit obsessed with them. And so there's ginkgos from my neighborhood. One street just turns golden every year, and I love it. And this is that Andy Goldsworthy forest path with this amazing twisty curve made out of trunks. And let's see what else we have. Wherever I go, when I travel, I especially love to just find trees wherever the most amazing trees are. And this is in Buenos Aires in Argentina, where the Urban Sketchers had their yearly conference. It's always in a different place every year. So it's a good excuse to go somewhere. And this tree was actually smaller than this, but it took on this immense importance. This is their national tree, the ceiba, and all of these white cotton balls are the blooms going to seed, and they were having tango dancing underneath it. So I always like to capture what's going on with the people as well. And in Mexico, they have just amazing trees. This coquito tree had fluorescent pink, blossoms in a way I have never seen before. Just amazing. And let's see what else we have. That's another one, a jacaranda. We also have them here. They're in LA and warmer climates. So much birdsong up in the canopy. It's just astonishing. And that's back home again on top of the Salesforce Tower. And I love the contrast between the nature and the skyscrapers. So I am always looking for trees wherever I go. I'm probably the most tree obsessed urban sketcher there is.
Nice. Awesome. Well, I can't wait to get started. So we're going to hop over here to the stage. And Cathy, it is your time. Take it away.
Just one quick thing before you dive in, Cathy. This is Beth. Hi, everyone, and thanks for being with us today. I just wanted to say that we do have a Q&A available. If you have questions, please go ahead and pop them in there. We did turn off the chat just so the moderators can focus on the Q&A. And we will have time for questions at the end, so you can put your questions in there and we will gather them and ask them as many as we can if there is time. So take it away, Cathy.
Okay, do we need the tree up there?
Yes.
Yes.
How's that?
That's perfect. So what we're going to do is an exercise in drawing one tree. This is a cinnamomum camphora, which is a camphor tree. If you crush the leaves, they smell like camphor. It's quite interesting. And I put up some colors that I use. I like to often use like a limited palette because you get a lot of cohesive colors when you limit your colors. And so I sort of did like a basic triad of a yellow, red, and blue, but like a dirty palette, like green gold instead of a yellow, and a rust color. And I've got the names of those there. But we're going to go ahead and we'll sketch the tree out, and then we'll do a process of layering 3 layers of color, and then we'll have a look at that. And this is these are like my little business cards, and I put some of, this is a local tree in Rockridge, California. That's also a cinnamomum. So it's just quite fun. Yeah, so I have just a Uniball Vision pen for this.
Just a reminder,
And,
Cathy, just a reminder that we can only see the left half of your notebook because of the picture. So yeah, when you hold stuff up, just hold it up kind of more to the left. Thank you.
Right. And so I want to take a minute just before we start drawing, just to talk about how I approach tree drawing. So some of the things the first thing I do is like not even pick up my tools. I use my eyes and just, sit there in front of whatever marvelous tree you've found and take a look at the canopy. Like, what's the big shape of it? Like in the cinnamomum, it's a very rounded dome shape, but you might be in front of a palm tree, which is more like a fountain, or a conifer, which is pyramidal. And so after looking at that basic shape, I look at the trunk and how it connects the canopy to the ground. And I look for the lean of the trunk. I look how it connects to the ground. Does it connect really cleanly, or do the roots splay out? And then back up in the canopy, I look at things like the branching structure. And there's a lot of hide and go seek with the branches and where the canopy covers it. I look for sky holes where you can see the sky peeking through. And on a larger drawing, there's enough room to do some of the bark texture, which is also really fun. And if it's a smaller tree, like we'll be drawing, we might do a call out like in a landscape architecture sketch, where you do a little blow up of that texture. So we'll go ahead and start sketching the tree. Yeah, so let's see, I need to look at this one close to me. Now I'll kind of just start with the trunk. I like to keep things a little loose and sketchy. When the branches start disappearing into the canopy, you can leave some gaps. And it's okay if you run off the page. And there's usually a central leader to the trees. Following curves of branches. There's a slight lean to this tree, and then when it meets the ground, it's got these rather bulbous little bump outs for the roots. Okay, I'm almost done drawing the branches. And then I sort of try to hold my pen a little looser when I'm doing the canopy, and just sort of do a loose line following that outer contours, but breaking up that line too. And when sunshine hits things, lines break up.
Can you slide your pad just a teensy bit to the left, pretty please?
Sure.
Yay, perfect. Thank you.
Great. Okay, and then where the branches disappear, to do a little bit of leaf action. So it's all kind of loose. I think the more I've sketched, the looser I've gotten, which is pretty fun. And then that's pretty much done. It reads as a tree. We might want to put like a little ground level in there. This is like one of the marvelous street trees in our area. So before we do our first layer of shading, I always look at where the sun source is coming from. And sometimes it's good just to make a little diagram to remind yourself. So I am seeing that this side of the tree is where the sun is coming from this side, because you can see the shadows thrown behind. So we are going to start putting some color on there. And so our first layer is going to be your lighter color. If you have that green gold or any yellow will work. It just, yeah, whatever you choose, you have a great variety of color to work with. And we won't work really wet because we don't want these to totally run into each other, but a little bit of that is really good. And so I always leave some white. And then one of the things I do before I start putting down watercolor is do the artist squint, which is like squint your eyes. And so the details disappear and you see the lights and the darks. And that's always a good idea to go back to, you know, to help you see. And oftentimes I think details can like really, they can throw us off when we start capturing details instead of the big picture. So just a little bit of loose laying down of that first color. There's detritus that falls off trees, you know, leaves are falling, and it's kind of nice to splash a little bit of that around to show the wind. Okay, and then we have the ultramarine blue. And with this, we can, I wonder if I should put my,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if I know you're you have a kind of a small working area there, but maybe you could just show your palette for a moment so people could see it.
sure, sure. This is a little schminky foldable palette. This folds over as the lid, but now it's full of wet watercolor. Yeah, and tube watercolors that were filled into like the little plastic color boxes. And so when you limit a palette, you can do a lot with mixing. And so that blue is also going to be our green when it's mixed. So that's our next color. And again, you can do the artist squint. Go back to the tree, and now you see where the darker areas are. We can start laying down some color in there. This side of the tree has more shadow on it. And this is definitely a, not color within the lines type of thing. So glad I don't think I ever had a teacher that said I had to color within the lines.
Hi, Kathy. This is Rebecca. We have someone wondering what kind of pen you used to sketch the tree at first.
Yeah, this is a basic fine liner. It's a Uniball Vision. And the reason I like these is that unlike microns, they won't die if you are drawing on moist paper. Because I often mix things up. Sometimes I paint first and then draw on top. If you draw on top of moist paper, so it won't kill your pen, it does make the line thicker. So yeah, that's a really nice little pen. And just do that artist squint. And so that's starting to read some of the darker areas. And then the transparent red oxide, that can bring things darker. And if you mix it up too dark, like that's almost a black, you can always bring it back, put a little more blue, a little more of the green gold, and then you get that rest gives you some really nice darker olive greens there. And then, yeah, just go back in, squint again. And then places where it's often darker is right underneath where the trees, the canopy, the leaves are shadowing the branch. And we'll do a little bit of shading on the trunk too. Okay. And sometimes on a smaller tree drawing, you might find that it's enough just to put in some just shading with the watercolor. On a bigger one, I definitely go in with line work on that, but I might, just do the blues and rest colors make some really nice grays. And trunks don't have to be all gray, but basically I leave some of the sometimes it's hard to talk and paint at the same time. I'll leave some of the I always like to leave some white where the sun is hitting things. And then just, there's a very subtle texture to this tree. But then I'll hit areas that are, those little areas that are, the sun doesn't get on the branches. And then just look at how the shadows splay out from there. You can hold your brush loosely Sometimes there's a house behind it and the shadows run straight up the house, but just something like that. And then I was going to do just a quick little bit on the like tree texture. Like that's probably enough there, and I might not add those lines. But if you ever find yourself in a boring business meeting and you have someone's card, you can just do a quick little tracing of this. And then you can take notes at a business meeting, make it look like you're taking notes, but you're actually practicing tree texture. And so I often just hold my pen loosely and do like a continuous line tree texture. I often just add this in the shaded area because it's also bringing those tones darker. But it's super loose. And that is actually, it is really fun to do. Kate's done some amazing bark studies. So continuous lines, it's fun, it keeps you looser, and the more you hold your pen towards the end instead of really holding it tightly towards the tip, if you hold it out here, it forces you to be looser. So this is about it. That's a little close-up of bark texture. If you wanted to add more later, you could come back and add it. The lines will be darker over watercolor, so if you want them lighter, you would do them first. So I think we're wrapped up on that. Is that good?
That's
Hi,
great.
Kathy. Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful sketching demo, and we have some questions if that's okay with you.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So, if you were doing the landscape, would you first have the blue sky established between the areas of foliage?
I've gone back and forth with that. It usually depends how much time I have. Sometimes I have to sketch quickly in urban sketching. Yes, sometimes I didn't show any of the sky, but if you have time, you can put that in first and let that dry, because the foliage colors often will just blend right into that if you don't give them time to dry. But absolutely, that's a great idea to do get the sky color in first.
That's great. And Suzanne asks, I have some Derwent ink sticks that I never use and thought I would for this. Is there any particular reason you prefer watercolor over an ink like Derwent?
Over the ink sticks in
Yes.
particular? I have never actually used those. You can use them in two ways though, because you can use your paintbrush right off the end of the stick, or if you're going in for a more bold look, you can use it directly and then wet it on your page. It really depends what look you prefer. I'm constantly mixing up my material. I use a lot of mixed media sometimes. So it really depends. I would just say try it different ways and see what you like. I think we're always following what we love, right? We're following our passion, and it's the same with all our materials.
Very true. And Sarita asks, can you tell us why you chose that particular Schminky palette? Is there something about it that you like for trees?
Well, this is the one that I use the most often. Let me show you how it folds up. I'll just get this a little bit drier. I like that it holds a lot, and the wells are pretty deep. But it's
Can you
super
hold
clean.
it just slightly higher? Sorry, we're perfect. Yes, we're only seeing part of it. Great.
Yeah, so you can mix on both sides. This side, I tend to work a little wet, and so these wells hold a lot of water. But it closes up like this, and it's not the thinnest palette out there, and it's heavy. I have a little bit. I have a lot of paint in here, but it's it's just so compact. I've got Velcro on the back because I stick it onto a sheet of chloroplast when I'm drawing. Chloroplast is a rigid plastic, and that's my drawing board. And then I clip my clipboard onto there. But yeah, I quite like this.
Folks would love to see the tree picture one more time. If you could show that next to your drawing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And to go with that, there is a great question. So when drawing trees, how do you keep track of the branches and how do you get the general feel of that kind of tree?
Well, I I think it starts with excuse me. It starts with just really just having a good look at it. And the thing I forgot to say is that both of these groups, like urban sketchers and nature journalers, are highly skilled in observation. So you guys are already there with your skill level looking at trees. So I mean, basically I try to look at that overall shape, and then in terms of where the branches, I mean, I just look and see where they stop, and then I sort of visualize following through with that line to where they reappear after the canopy has hidden them. So it's kind of chasing it down, if it were. But it is a total game of hide and seek with the branches and the leaves.
Thank you. It looks like, are we sharing to Padlet right now? If folks have drawings that they did alongside with Cathy.
We can, yes. Go ahead, and I'm gonna hop in here with my voice. Cathy, can you grab the QR code?
Oh, I have it. I can, I have the link for
Okay, so you can put
Padlet
the
that I
link
can
in.
pop in the chat, and yes, and there is a QR code right there.
So let's just do a quick chat on that. So there is a little gallery that we've set up for you to be able to post whatever work you're doing on that. And the process is you can take a photo with your mobile device, or you can take, you can go to this QR code. It'll bring up this site called Padlet. And then at the bottom, you'll see a place where you can add a photo or add a file. So go ahead and take a photo of that. I'm going to go ahead and do that now. You're welcome to do that as it starts, people start posting that, then it will actually automatically populate. One thing I will say is please take the photo so that it's tall and thin. Padlet does not have the ability to rotate images. So you want to kind of keep your photo going landscape or portrait version. And let me see if I can make sure that's working. We're here. All right. See if anybody has got their stuff kind of coming up. There's a little green dot or a green plus at the bottom of that screen. You can give it the image a name if you want. Doing this real time.
Kathy, while Kate's
I'm sorry, but
working on that. Kathy, while Kate's working on that, can you, we had just one other question. How do you start to fill in the shading and the shadows on and between the branches on your drawing? Do you do more shading than that? Or what would you do?
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes after I let my sketch dry, that's when I take another squinty look at that. And I see if I've gotten the darks dark enough, or if I want to add more texture. I often use some colored pencils to add texture that's not as dark. I love the Caran d'Ache pencils. I use watercolor pencils as well. These are Albrecht Dürer pencils. So I may come back with a second layer. I often mix it up with pencils afterwards.
Great. Thank you so much.
and just take a look at this. How awesome are you all? This is like some cool
Nice.
stuff happening back here on the Padlet. So, make sure you Like, get in on that. Awesome.
Really nice. Great job, all of you.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, we're going to go to the Padlet now so that y'all can see things happening while we quickly change our view. So here we got some new ones coming up here. I'll leave this at the top. And we're
These
gonna
all look
do
so great.
a quick shift.
We also want to encourage folks to share their drawings in Wonderland, which is our free private online community. I'll put the link for that in the chat and also on social media and tag Wild Wonder Foundation and Arbor April. And we'd love to see your tree drawings. So thanks for sharing. These are great. So fun to see them pop up.
All right. We'll get this set up.
I just
Move the water
posted
because
the
I don't
link
trust
to
myself with an
Wonderland
open
in the
water
chat.
glass. Sweet.
Do you
All
need
right.
this?
No, set that aside. Okay, so a couple things that happened on that. We're talking about branching structure and talking about hang on a sec. Can you move that chair over just a little bit? We've got such strong light in here.
This way or out of the light?
Yeah, this way. No, the other way. Yeah. It's like bouncing off the floor. All right, well, so do what we can. But in addition to looking at those trees, like Cathy talked about, there are also some maybe non-obvious ways where we can get involved with trees. And one technique that I've been really having fun with is this idea of a branching diagram. Now, will this give you the lush foliage and the color that I know so many people really enjoy celebrating? No, it will not. But that does not mean it is not worth pursuing and super, super fun. So this came out of some work that I did a while back where I was exploring kind of how things were structured and really trying to understand less about the aesthetic of a tree and more about like what was interesting and what was the form of it. So these actually are up in the Sierra, and the phenomena of the trees there above the snowpack are really interesting because they grow and then the snow comes and then they kind of move and jiggle because the way that they need to kind of mature beyond where the snow melt has happened forces a bend. So what you get is these literally like these kinky trees, right? And when you walk through the landscape, when you start to notice the structure of the tree beyond kind of the color and some of the foliage, is you start to notice these incredibly dynamic and interesting, very kinky trunks. And just being able to focus on something like that has really opened up a lot of observation for me and a lot of fun. And it works well with other kind of activities too. So cacti can be quite complex, even though this one actually is not. But there was a cactus that had a lot going on with it. And rather than try and spend some time getting all of the form and the volume, I just wanted to do a line diagram. And that was what really opened up my ability to map some of the interesting things that were happening across this specific life form. So this growth habit. And let's see, I think I've got one more and then we're going to get to making them. Nowhere to put my other books. Oh, well. All right. Let's see. Here's one. So what we are going to be working on is something like an aggregate of this one specifically called branch data, but really just the stick figures of a tree. And being able to focus on some of the branching only at to the third level, you know, the main trunk, the second level, the third level, without all of the detail, without all of the amazing canopy, will allow you to see a tree in kind of a different way. And that's how we're going to spend our time. So definitely moving more into the abstraction, less the illustration. And I hope that that will be super fun because I think it's super fun. All right, so let's get started. For this, what you will need is a blank piece of paper. You can use your sketchbook or you can use anything you want with that. And I'm going to go ahead and walk through just how I might approach a branching diagram because it sounds super easy and really it is. But when you get into it, sometimes there's some things that surprise you. So we're going to take really about 1 minute or so and just trace some simple tree branches. And then we're going to do a whole bunch in some pretty short timed activities. Because the key is to be able to see a tree and understand it so that then you can really relish with more lushness like Cathy just demonstrated. All right, so how are we doing, Rebecca? Can you see the page here?
Yes,
Okay.
I
I'm
can
going to go
see. Looks
just to
great.
the hand because we're going to do a hand and a reference shot. All right, so grab your favorite mark maker. And the reference shots I recognize might be a little small, but do your best. And we will persevere. So I'm going to use, actually for this one, so I generally use a Tombow Fudenosuke pen. It's a black brush tip. And the brush tip is great because it allows for lighter line or heavier line, depending on the pressure that you bring to it. However, for today's activity, for visibility on the screen, I'm going to use our best friend of a fine point Sharpie. You can use whatever mark maker you want, right? Like you can use a pencil or any kind of pen. It doesn't matter. And so we're going to go ahead and do the branching structure for this tree. And to do that, we're going to keep it really small. Okay, so this is an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. I'm actually going to turn it so you can kind of see where the edges are. I'm going to come back to here. So you can see that the edges are like over on the side. So I'm just going to keep it pretty small and draw a line at the bottom. And then I'm going to follow the branching structure up. Now I don't have a lot of height here, so you see I'm going to make a very small diagram. In fact, with a blue pencil, I'm going to see if I can just draw in kind of the shape of the kind of frame that I'm going to use. So I'm going to start out at the middle and kind of come up, and then about where that big knot is, this is a major branching area. And it looks like the leader comes up to the left. And then I'm going to stop because that's kind of that main leader. But we've got this other branch. Can't quite see where it comes in, but we're going to come up here. So almost up to where that right branching starts, and then it takes a jiggle, goes up, takes a really lovely jiggle, and then it kind of spreads out. So that is the first level is the trunk. The second level is these main branchings. And then the third level is going to kind of start out here and come up. This one comes almost up and wobbles over, makes a cross. On this side of the branch, up and a wobble and out. And then tucked behind this branch, got a smaller sub branch that comes out. It's been pruned, and then up here. So this is our branching diagram for this tree. And we're going to kind of leave it at that. This is a wonderful study if you're looking to do something that has more depth or more volume. But even though the thickness of this branch is thicker than, say, the thickness of this branch up here, I'm not going to indicate that because this is much more of a diagram. An incredibly helpful diagram, turns out. So let's go ahead and do a few more examples, because this one, I've curated these so that they introduce some of the challenges you'll actually see when you're out in the field. So let's go to something like this. Same thing as we did before. Draw a line at the bottom. This is a Japanese maple growing near my house. So on this one, you want to identify that main leader. And this one branches out. It's almost kind of got a bowl form, so the leader is not as clear. In that case, I almost always start from one side of the tree. Like this time I'm starting from the right-hand side, and then I'm going to move from right to left as I'm looking at this tree branching. So they're joined a little bit at the bottom, and then this one kind of comes off at a lean, and then this third one kind of comes off at a lean. So that's my first level and my second level. Join that. The third level gets super exciting, right? Because this heavier lean one comes straight up, and then about here, it's going to start to branch way out. We've got one coming up here, got one kind of tucked behind, another one tucked behind, another one tucked over here that kind of comes up. And you can see where we're going with this. Follow along. That one V's out. This one kind of takes a curve, and this one has a V. Now I'm not going to worry about all of the upper branching up here or the foliage of the crown. Just going to try and understand what's kind of happening in this area here. Now, when you're working from a photo, you only have one aspect, but when you're out in the real world interacting with the tree, you can walk around it and really start to understand like what is going on with those branches. So this is actually a harder activity to do on screen than it will be when you have access to the entire volume of a tree. But a lot of trees have complexity about like this. So this is kind of a standard branch diagram. So what do you do if you have a lot of foliage? This is a lovely one because it's got a pretty clear trunking and branching structure, but then it all disappears. I love how Cathy was talking about the hide and seek. I call it the dance of the branch, right? Like in and out of the foliage. So go ahead and draw our baseline. This tree's trunk has a main lean. And then I'm going to pick that middle one for the leader. Working from right to left, I'm going to look at that swoop. Like, gosh, how gorgeous is that? And then you get a little, I'll come back and do that little V. There's a little one in here, one tucked behind that's kind of following that lean. And then this one over here that again is following the lean, looks like it heads straight up. And this little one over here is the only kind of third level of branching I can see directly. Everything else is behind the foliage. So you know what, in a branch diagram, I'm not going to worry about that, because the focus is on what's happening with this tree structure. How is it supporting itself and how is it grown to be able to kind of spread its canopy? All right, so that all sounds very well and good. And then you walk out in nature. And if you're not in a street tree situation, you're going to encounter something that looks more like this. And you're like, wow, okay, tree. So this is a Western sycamore growing in Albany, California. And this is tricky because of the photo. There's multiple trees going on in here, but we're going to focus on that one in front with the really almost the whomping willow type of branches. And on this one, it's worth taking a moment to kind of just really look and see if you can diagnose where those trees and that branching structure is, because there's a lot of dynamic action happening on this one. So I'm going to draw our baseline. And then I'm noticing that that first leader that's coming up from the trunk, there's a slight lean to it, but it is going almost all the way up. It's actually out of frame at the very top of the screen. That is a very complete straight leader heading up. And I'm working from right to left. I'm going to take the second level branches. This one, oh, look at that swoop. This one kind of swoops up and arcs up towards that leader. The next one comes in here and swoops down and around all the way into my other diagram. Another one here, kind of crossing down and over. This one kind of tucked into the bottom, pops up like that.
This one is so fun and wild.
I know, super wild. And you know, this is what's fun, is that when you're doing a branching diagram, it helps you make sense of this in a way that is different from trying to depict it in more of a portrait type of way. Okay, I can't lose track of where I'm at. So let's see. This leader has a main kind of companion coming out with this marvelously almost 90-degree angle coming down. There's a lot going on with this tree, people. I think I'm going to leave it there because there's a lot going on. So even with a branch diagram, you can start to see that there is a lot of dynamic types of line work and communication that you can do with that. So let's go ahead and pick this up, the pace up a bit. We are going to, I hand that off to you. We're going to do a whole page of these babes. So
one question while you're changing the focus is, do you happen to know, someone asked, do you happen to know what causes the curvature of the branches that are so wide, so varied in these trees? Is it wind? Is it light?
That is such a great question. And I know for the Western sycamore, so they have very fragile branches and they lose a lot of branches. In fact, if you're familiar with any street trees in many cities, they've picked the London plane tree, which is a hybrid between a sycamore, American sycamore, and a Chinese, do you recall, Cathy, what the second one is? I should know that, but I'm blanking on it. And it's a hybrid because it actually strengthens the branches. So this is a sycamore. It's probably lost a lot of branches. And so what happens when a tree loses kind of a major branch is it it's going to shift kind of how it's structured and what its weight is like. Sycamore branches often come straight out, but then if they lose the tip of that, they'll tend to kind of curve straight up. So you get a lot of these like sprangly bits to it. I'm also going to ask, so Cathy has a lot more pruning and tree knowledge than I do. What other considerations, environmental or otherwise, contribute to tree branching movement?
I mean, offhand, I'd say it's access to light. You know, maybe that's an adaptation to less light. But what I most often see in urban scenes is really poor pruning.
Yeah.
Which is one of our prompts for the bad things happening to trees.
Yeah, later this month, it'll be like tree damage, which is always hard. Speaking of which, we're going to do some trees. And if you are a professional pruner, or if you also know quite a bit about pruning, I want to give you a heads up that some of the street trees that we're going to do these branching structures for are street trees that are in maybe not the best of health. They've been pruned, they've had a rich life, but they're kind of struggling. So if that is going to be disturbing to you, just be prepared that is could be concerning. On the other hand, every tree deserves love and every tree deserves attention, especially the ones that have had some damage or maybe are not doing as well. And if you can find people who steward that tree and make a change, then that is all the more power to us. So let's go ahead and start with this. So what we're going to do is we're going to do like, I'm going to say between 20 and 30 seconds for each, and we're going to do about 9 of them. So let me show you, this is it's a kind of a strange stage. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to lay out my page first. I'm going to turn it kind of horizontal. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to leave some space at the top. I'm going to draw myself a line so that I know what to do. And I want to leave a little bit of space at the bottom. If you are a good planner, you don't need to draw your guidelines. But if you're like me and you need some structure, then that will be helpful. And then in between, let's go ahead and do, I think we can pull off 9. What's our time, Rebecca?
It's 10:24.
Sorry, I was typing
Sorry.
something in.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's try for 9 of them. Why not? And if we run out of time, you can just cut me off, Beth. How about that? Okay, so I'm going to divide this into thirds. So I have a line that's kind of short, a line that's kind of near the edge here, kind of see that near the edge here, and then I have these 2 lines here. And in between that, let's divide this into thirds. Now, each one of these little places is going to be a tree. Actually, bottom one too, is going to be a little branching diagram. Okay, now in order for me to work this out, I have to go back to the reference image. And so I'm going to try and move my page, but you're not going to necessarily see everything all at once. And that is going to be just fine. Okay, so let's get started. Shake out your hands, make sure they're nice and limber, grab your favorite marking implement, and we will go forward. And I'm going to try and be quiet on this one and not talk so much. So just follow that branching structure. And if for some reason the image is a little hard to see, do what you can, and then we can move on. We're only going to do about 20 seconds for each. So our time is quick. All right, let's get started. That was quick. That was our time. Okay, we're going to keep moving on to our next one. This little baby ginkgo. Right, number 3. been topped, sadly. Oh, only got half of that one, but that is okay. All right, moving on to our next one. Not sure if this is technically a tree, but it has such a beautiful form, I couldn't resist it. Back there somehow. Okay, our next one. He's been through some stuff. Probably take. And sometimes we have very human interacted, almost constructed trees. Almost a Disneyland. You can't see that foliage over on the right, but that doesn't matter because we're just doing branching structure here. All right, we've got 3 more, and then we will call it. Whew. Another one, street tree. This one's super tall, so I'll have to be more careful. I've been overflowing my frames here. Not much other than the first 2 on that one. Everything else is a 4th or 5th degree branch, level branch, because this has been pollarded, which is cut off, and then the new shoots are coming out at a much smaller dimension. Is a tree structure that if you have a pruner or you're an arborist, I'm sure is worth having some debate about. All right, let's go on to our next one. Let's see. This is a California oak. I believe it's a coast live. Follow that leader up. See what's going on back there. All right, we have space for one more. Let's do this one because it cracks me up. This one might not take 30 seconds. This is an olive tree that is growing, I think, before they put in street tree standards in our neighborhood. But it is just so cheery. And it's actually more kind of down around like that. All right, people. So now we have happily accomplished a whole little forest of trees. And you might look at this and think, huh, well, I'm not so sure about that. Not so sure. I really kind of want to have that in my permanent journal, and for a couple reasons. So here's a couple things. One is I encourage you to do this anyway, to keep it in your permanent journal and to celebrate it, because sometimes even a partial one of these will bring back memories and experiences that you're just not going to be able to collect. So think about walking along a path or a hike or a street and being able to do a branching diagram of every one of those trees. Now, if you're going to try and do a portrait of each one, you just wouldn't be able to make that time commitment. But you can do a branching diagram, and then you might choose one or two to express with the watercolor looseness that Cathy introduced us to do a little bit of foliage. You might go back to the one that, called to you. But I think every branching structure, every tree deserves a little bit of attention. Think about it as meeting a whole bunch of people at a party, right? You don't have to get into their life story, but you do want to get to know them, a little bit about what they're about. That's what we're doing here. So if you want to make this maybe a little more special or more memorable, add some to it. Here's a few things that we can do. And for this, I'm going to come over to a different pen, something that's a little bit lighter or thinner. So if you'd like to add a sense of scale, you can draw a little picture of a person. So the scale, if you recall, this tree was really, really tall, even though I only have half of the branches. In fact, if you look back at the reference shot, let me bring that back up here. You will see that there's actually a person standing at the bus stop underneath. So that gives you a sense of scale for this specific tree. So if I was going to draw a person, I would draw a little stick figure, head, body, legs, and arms. So that gives me a sense of like, whoa, that's like kind of a big tree, right? When we go back to the one that was more human designed, this is actually a very small tree. You can tell by the windows that are up in that reference shot. If I were to stand next to it, or if someone were to stand next to it, they would be probably about like this. Not going to quite hit the ground on my person here. I should start with the. So that is a very different sense of scale, and you can show that scale with just a little bit part of the diagram. Another way that you can show scale, let me just come back to the full, is to estimate the height. So I think this is the one at the BART station. So you might put a little key along here and kind of take an estimate. Let's go back to that reference shot just so that we can have it in front of us. You can get kind of a sense from the car next to it. So a person's probably going to be about here, maybe and I always think of, so I'm 6 feet, almost 6 feet. So I kind of do it like, where would my head go? Your mileage may vary. So definitely know your own height, preferably in metric and in imperial. And so that you can do some rough estimates by, if I were to stand next to that, how tall would I go? So I'm going to say that's probably like 6, maybe 12, 14. At the very, very top, that's probably going to be about 21, but maybe a little bit less, maybe a little more like 18. So where I stop the diagram, it's going to probably be about, let's say that's about 16 feet. And then I'm going to put a question mark because I'm not completely sure. Another really interesting way of doing the spacing is you can actually walk it out if you're near the tree. You can get close up to the canopy or to the trunk and walk out the canopy or the major branching in one direction. You can see this one's almost square. So I'm going to probably put it a little bit smaller than a square. This is probably about 15 feet. And next time I go and greet that tree, I'm actually going to space it out. I'm going to pace that out and see how close my estimates are. So if you want to add a scale of some sort, you can really hone your estimation capabilities and also give a sense of what this diagram is doing.
Kate, just to let you know, you have about 9 minutes left in this section in terms of the schedule you gave us.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I think that we're going to double down on our branching diagram. So one thing that you can do also that's really fun is you can annotate this. Now, this isn't going to be as meaningful right now because you didn't see these trees, you didn't curate these trees, but when you have your trees that you're engaging with, you'll have notes about them. Where were you? When was it? What time of day? What was their location? You could do a map along the bottom. I think the best thing to make it really kind of resonant is to give it a fun name. And there are a variety of very good tree branching puns. I know this is probably a little hard to see. This is I mean, you should come up with your own because this is my list, but like, don't be limited. Ha ha ha. Did you see what I just did there? Limited. Don't feel limited by this. Like, give it a good name. I'm not kidding. That's like super fun. So I'm going to put this away because that's awkward. Okay. So Cathy, why don't you pick a name and we'll get that written on there.
Pick a name.
Yeah.
From your lovely
What's our
list.
study?
Branch exchange.
Ooh, the branch exchange. Okay. So quick and dirty lettering here. I'm going to do all caps because it's a title. You should write your choice in all caps.
Also, someone was asking if you could just recap the order of the drawing the structures again.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Happy
Thank
to
you.
do that. I will do that right after we finish this. So when you put your title on it, if you give yourself some, like, this is like stress lettering, just make the beginning of each letter and each word a little heavier. Kind of give that a little bit of shading. Gives it a little bit of specialness. And then if you honestly, if you want to truss it up a little bit, you can give it a frame. Out, a little jiggle. Down, across. Down here is a great place for metadata. So this is via online. At Wild Wonder.
We can't see that part, FYI. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you. What's our date today? Monday, April
4/6.
Okay. So now it starts to feel a little bit more like it is it's a thing, right? Hang on, I'm going to get us back on our stage. There you go. All right. So question about or recap of the order. Paper. This is the order I do it, and you're welcome to figure out what order works best for you. I draw the line first. The major trunk until it hits its first branch, second. And then looking at, if there's a leader, I'll continue that all the way up to whatever the leader's looking like. Sometimes there's not a strong leader. A leader is the highest point, it's the main branch of a tree. For street trees, they're often pruned so that there's a strong leader. But for wild trees, that's not so true. It also depends on the species of the tree. But if there's like a strong leader, kind of like what we had in this one, or what we also, to a certain degree, had in that crazy sycamore, that beautiful sycamore, I think it was this one, then go ahead and do the leader all the way up. And then pick your choices from right to left or left to right. So you'll either go this direction or you'll go this direction, and start with that second level of branches and form it however it's wibbling up until it hits that next division. Now, trees are unruly, so sometimes that's easier to do than other times. If you have a system in your mind, though, it'll keep you kind of honest with where you're at, because it's easy to get lost in trees. So there might be another branch kind of coming behind this one. There might be smaller ones that stick out that I can still see. Don't draw anything behind the foliage. And then I'll move over to the other side of the tree and kind of go that direction. Maybe it's like that. So that is our third step. And then the fourth step and the last one is whatever that next division is. So maybe this one has one that comes out here. This one has a straight one that's coming out and then jumping up. This one might have a V. This one might have one. Sometimes they have things that cross over each other. That is okay. Sometimes they have, yeah, it would be everything off of this second level. Now, if you'll notice in a lot of the trees, some of them have a bumpy, jumpy off place. That usually means there's some kind of, that they had a branch that was then removed, because that's what's going to give it that hard jiggle. And a lot of times they'll have like this kind of lovely Y shape. We saw some of that in a couple of these trees. The young ginkgo had some lovely Ys, and then that also the more succulent looking tree had some nice Ys. But that's something interesting to pay attention to, because it'll kind of overall inform the arch or the habit of the overall tree. So that would be, let's see, so line, trunk, first level main branches, and then second level. And you have a choice. I work from, my right to left, but sometimes you'll want to go left to right. All right. Any other questions on that?
Thank you so much, Kate. We do have a few more questions. This has been so great and so fun to watch. So Sophie asks, foreshortening is tricky when the branches are coming at the viewer. Can you offer any tips?
Oh, yes, foreshortening. That's, yes, it is tricky. When I'm doing a structure of a tree, trying not to take that into account. If the foreshortening, when you're looking straight on at a tree, whatever angle you're at, you're gonna see that branch is kind of like either not there or stubby. And that is okay. Like, you don't have to draw that branch. It can be interesting to do a branch diagram from 4 aspects, like walk around the tree. Sometimes you can't get it all 4 parts of the tree, but that's probably the best way to I want to say accurately, but it's never going to be exact, but to more fully understand the branching structure. If you have a quick hit and you're looking straight on and there's something that's foreshortened, you're either probably not going to see it because you'll see it more as a dot, or it'll appear, instead of long and thin, like the actual branches, it'll be shorter and stubbier. Draw what you see. Just kind of squint your eyes, as Cathy had mentioned, see if you can reduce the detail. You're really looking at the skeleton of this. And so you don't need to accommodate any foreshortening in this specific method, but I think it has helped me understand foreshortening, because as I've walked around a tree and seen that the branch that I thought was short is actually quite long, but I was seeing it from an angle where that foreshortening was coming into effect. Then I understood the branch and I understood it was foreshortening. Then you can open up your toolkit of tricks and tools for doing that. And maybe we can get there. There's a really good video from John Muir Laws about drawing trees with foreshortening. And there's some tricks to do that visually that your branch diagram does not need to accommodate, but I think your branch diagram will certainly inform.
Thank you. And how did you start creating these branching diagrams? They are so fascinating, and what I love about them is that you don't focus on detail, you're focusing on structure. So where did you first pick this up?
I think I love that question. Thank you. It can sometimes feel like there's not as much appreciation for the simple and the more structural diagrammatic view of the world. So, I sometimes struggle with that myself. I picked this up probably through a desperate act. I've struggled with trees a lot. They have so much complexity, and sometimes they're just so beautiful. Even a more overlooked tree, once you start spending time with it, can reveal just such nuance and secrets. And I fall in love with things that, or with beings that I interact with. So anyway, I was struggling with time. I needed a faster way to develop my understanding and observation. And I also wanted a simpler way where I could absolutely give myself the permission and the requirement of not having to deal with the details. So I'm going to go back to that branching diagram that was originally done. And give me a sec. I'm going to look around here for just a moment. I think it was, I put some of my books elsewhere. No, can't find them, but. I'm not gonna be able to find it. Okay, never mind. I will look at this instead. So let's take a look at this one. So being able to just look at what the form was just very, it was very relieving, right? So it didn't have to be everything. And so that's where they really started, was trying to be much more diagrammatic, try and understand and not capture, but communicate and note what what the tree was doing, instead of necessarily all of its complexity with the leaves and foliage. So I'd say that. While we do that, I'm actually going to answer whatever other questions come up in our remaining, I think, 2 or 3 minutes for this. But in the meantime, I'm also going to just put a little bit of fun color, not foliage color, but just some diagrammatic color on these with a simple palette, which is made out of paper and packing tape for a mixing area. And I'll just put this on the screen in case you're curious about colors. I'll pick this up a bit. So this is the palette that I use. These are all of the colors. You'll notice similar colors to what Cathy has in her palette. I have a Hansa yellow and a quinacridone pink and a phthalo blue. Those are my primary mixing colors. But the yellow ochre is not as rich as the gold, but it has a similar kind of more a warmer feel. And then the ultramarine blue too. So, and I don't have a strong red. I'll usually mix my red from the pink and either a phthalo blue or the ultramarine blue. All of these are Daniel Smith brand. But for a diagram type of sheet like this, because we're not worried about local color or the actual representational color, we can be a little bit more free and easy with it. And so for this one, I think I might use purple. I'm just going to puddle up a blob of purple here. And because I went kind of outside those lines, I'm going to recreate those frames, see if I can get a little bit more area of focus by kind of just filling in a background on each of these. So if there's any more questions, we can do this at the same time, but I want to show you that even adding a little bit of color can enhance your reference ability and enjoyment of what you've done, but also can do a little bit of work for you if you tend to go out of the frames a little bit. You can frame it up so that it actually covers the tree.
Thank you, Kate. There is one more question. And do you know what makes a tree in terms of scientific classification, or what defines it between a shrub or a tree?
I don't know if I'm being baited. I don't know if this is a trick question.
No, not at
But,
all. We just had someone curious.
and I don't want to call someone out for asking a trick question. I think that is a good question, and I think scientists are still trying to figure that out. There's associations for what we might commonly think of as trees versus shrubs, right? Like, so it's taller, it's got a heavier singular trunk or some branching structure that tends to be similar more to these branching structures and less like all from the bottom, although that is not true all the time. And when I asked in a program about horticulture, what the definition was a tree versus a shrub was, I was told that there's a lot of shrees and shrubs that are really kind of a mix in between, and that many plants, many species can be trained into a tree or trained or kept as a shrub, depending on how humans interact with them and how they engage with them. So then I'm going to pass off to Cathy for that one. Here, do you want to take that one on for a sec?
Yeah, I mean, there is that more amorphous area where you don't know if it's a shrub or a tree, but and I studied I took so many plant classes, tree classes. It's like, a tree when you see it. I mean, it generally has, a much thicker trunk, very woody, and shrubs they're usually multi-branched, thinner branches, and not the density of the branches of a tree, if that explains it a little bit.
Yes, thank you. And we do have a couple more questions. So Cindy asks, drawing bark that is in layers and or curving off the trunk, how do you do that? Because shagbark hickory trees are so fascinating and the bark is so interesting. Do you have a strategy for how to draw curling bark?
Yeah, I just drew a paper bark melaleuca tree in Berkeley that had some of that, and Kate drew, was it a madrone or a strawberry tree?
Strawberry tree, right.
Do
you want to actually, I'm just going to give a quick wrap up, and then why don't you come over here? Would you do a quick demo for us, Cathy? Do you mind
Sure.
that? Okay. Then let's go back. I found the last one. This is the first kind of a fish actual branch data that I had done. Since then, I've done a lot more as part of larger spreads. And I've done some that I couldn't track down that were maps of like street trees or trees along a trail that were more sequential. But this is kind of the, I would say, the prototypical, like if you want to do a series of branch tree explorations in an area where there's a lot of tree density, then this is kind of what it can look like when it's pretty clean. We were a little bit more loosey goosey today, and that was fine too. All right, let's go ahead and hop over to the stage, and Cathy, show us some curling branch bark.
And while Kathy is showing this to us, just wanted to remind everyone, I just posted the Padlet link in the chat, so you can share the drawings that you did alongside with Kate, and we will take a look at those after.
So I would say the approach in drawing the bark, really, again, and I'm just doing this from memory, but it's all about your observation and really seeing what's in front of you. The more you look and observe, which I know you all do so well, you see when bark is like the melaleuca I was drawing, you see where it comes off of the branch, off of like the trunk. Most of the texture was lower on the main trunk, but also I'd say do the squinting again. And part of what makes it look, the 3D, it's got life, off the paper is looking at the shadow areas. So if you have these bits of, there was so much action on that tree. It was crazy, just layers and layers of this papery.
Can you slide your sketchbook up just a little? Thank you. Perfect.
Yeah, so part of that layering is also looking at what falls into shadow too, and the white areas, the lighter areas come towards you. The darker areas are a little more recessed. So, and the trunks, there's so much interest in them that there's a lot of different color, but I would say notice what comes out towards you, what goes away. I would love to see a picture of that tree, the tree that person mentioned, because that's, I don't know what that looks like. That sounds like one that I don't know. But this bark, there's also some color in there. But mainly, I mean, it really depends like how much time you have. When I drew this melaleuca, my truck has a commercial license plate, so I was parked there during a farmer's market event, and so I was kind of taking up a parking place, but I could legally park there. But sometimes I find I have to leave an area for whatever reason, so I'm always looking at how much time I have to park. But you can I think the longer you have on this, the more layers you can create. Mixing colors, but really I think it's the darks that start bringing it out, making it feel like it's peeled. So there's parts that come off of the main trunk, and then there's areas that you can see how it reveals there's more layers peeling. This has both, this melaleuca has both those things, the bark peeling off like that, and then there'll be layer after layer after layer in these areas, like papery bark. And if you look closely at it, I think it is just a matter of, you see the dark and the shadow, and then you see the light of the bark that's above it. So if you need to do multiple watercolor layers, this is still wet, so it's not quite showing it, but you let each successive layer dry. And does that explain a little bit?
Yes, thank you, Kathy. So the shagbark hickory tree was what the question was about. And we do have those. So I've seen them, and this tree looks similar to how that bark curls. So thank you. This was wonderful.
We have those here.
Do you by any chance have what you did for the bark day in your sketchbooks with you?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. I work with like 3 different sketchbooks. I'm like queen of the sketchbooks.
We just have a couple minutes left.
Okay. Are you calling it, Beth?
No, I'm just saying you have a few minutes left, so I wasn't sure what else you had planned. We do have a couple more questions, or if you have other things you wanted to share, we have time for that. Maybe you want to show the Padlet. There's more things popping up there that might be fun to look at.
Ooh,
look
look
at
at
that.
those. So cool. Yeah, let me hop over here so we can really see it.
I love
Wow.
how they're-
Oh, that mosaic is really fascinating.
They're all so different. I just love how everyone's eyes see things so differently. It's so unique with each person.
I want to do a shout out and thank you for posting and sharing your work. You know, we learn as a community, and this is so just delightful and powerful, really, to see through your eyes, you know?
Absolutely. There's so much tree joy here. I just love it. Nice to see that palette of colors off to the side too. I always call that like the color story.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can mix right by your page. There's another
They
one.
keep coming.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Yay for tree joy.
Yes.
Yay. All right, we do only have like 1 minute left. And so I just want to give a high five, Kathy. Woohoo! First time we've done an online thing like this. And of course, high five. I do it, but anytime you high five in Zoom, it's like you're getting hit in the face. So I'm not going to do that. We're just going to say like high five and thank you for spending our tree time together. And any final shout outs or anything?
I just wanted to hop back on. Thank you so much. I'm going to start my video. All right. No, I didn't want to pin me. Sorry. Thank you so much for your patience, everyone. This is the first time I am helping to moderate a class, so I'm a little figuring it out. But I have a few closing remarks. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I wanted to share a reminder that this class is hosted by the Wild Wonder Foundation, which is dedicated to encouraging nature connection and conservation through attention, curiosity, art, science, and community. You can learn more about Wild Wonder at wildwonder.org. And we are so grateful to today's teachers, Kathy and Kate, who are donating their time to teach this class. All funds raised will go to support Wild Wonder, and thank you for your support and your generosity in helping to share the joy of nature journaling. And a big thank you to Beth, who has been backstage today helping me out. And this class was recorded, so we will be emailing you a link about a week away from today. And also a reminder that the rest of the month we are hosting Arbor April with Kathy and Kate. And so follow along on Instagram, Facebook, Wonderland. The prompts can be found at the link that we posted in the chat. It's wildwonder.org. Don't quote me on this, I just posted it and lost it. /NJ25. So thank you so much for joining us. This has been wonderful. And thank you everyone for participating and sharing your work.
Happy tree.
Thank you.